And good morning, Space Engineers. This is Mr. Kassarian, and we're starting a different project today. Mostly because I think building a cargo ship is boring you guys to tears. I know it would be boring me to tears, so I'll probably finish the rest of that up off camera and show you guys how she turned out. But now, we're building a warship. Oops, I need a new station block. Boom! Alright. Warship, huh? Yeah, a warship. Alright, so we're starting this thing using heavy armor. Okay? Heavy armor, heavy armor. And what we're going to be doing is building this thing in a style that I haven't seen very many people build in. Because quite simply, it's a little bit more complicated. In essence, this ship is going to be built along the style of a lot of World War II battleships. Though we're not really building a battleship. This thing's going to be more of a... let's call her a heavy cruiser, shall we? Maybe a heavy cruiser, maybe a light cruiser. It really depends on how you define those terms. So most of those ships that I see built for combat and space engineers, at least in the large ship scales, tend to be large. They tend to be pretty much empty on the inside. And I don't like that. There are a bunch of reasons I don't like that, but mostly it has to do with the fact that that sort of a large, empty internal build ends up being, I think, weaker than it should be. It ends up being less survivable. And it ends up being very, very fragile to enemy attack. How do I say this? A warship is, in essence, designed to survive contact with the enemy. That's what I'm looking for. And if your warship can't do that, well, yeah, you're basically a glass cannon. And I know we've all basically played glass cannons in different MMOs and whatever, but a warship shouldn't be a glass cannon, alright? You shouldn't have a ship that can't take battle damage. Because no matter how good your piloting skills, your ship's going to take battle damage. And it's probably going to take a lot of battle damage. Alright? Alright. So now that we have that out of the way, what does it mean to be able to survive taking hits from the enemy? It means redundancy. Now, we don't have a lot of space for redundancy, really. Our mass limits are kind of low, and our engine systems are just a wee bit underpowered for us to really survive taking that many hits. Now, or rather to build a ship that's capable of taking hits in the way that a real vessel would be. So what we're doing instead is we're going to rely on a doctrine that was used by battleships in the Second World War, which is, I believe it was called the Citadel defense. And the Citadel defense basically means that you have a warship that is not incredibly armored in every part of the ship. So her armor thickness isn't the same. Alright, so you can see here these internal walls, yada yada. Alright, easy. Now, the trick here is that I'm not building this ship to be equally armored, as I said. What we're building out right now is going to be part of the Citadel. And the Citadel in a warship is the part of the ship that is designed to be the most heavily protected. So it's the part of the ship that you absolutely do not want to lose under any circumstances. And actually, I'm going to tear out the work that I just put together because... yes, okay. So, the thing about the Citadel is you want it to be well protected and you want it to be compact. Okay? So, you want to try and use the least amount of mass possible to protect the most of your ship. Because again, mass is the limiting factor. The heavier your ship is, i.e. the more mass it has, the harder it's going to be to maneuver, the more engines you're going to need, which means the more weak points you're going to have. So we need to find a balance between protecting our ship and making it as small as we possibly can make it. Now, we also want some subdivision, and I'm trying to figure out how to put this together so that I actually have some halfway decent subdivision going on. Well, okay, so then we need a bit of space over here, so we'll put the wall here, right? Okay, so that's a wall, and that's a room. Where's my center line? 3 and 3. I do not have a center line right now. So let's give ourselves one more space. Now, I'm planning to incorporate all of the ship's vitals into this area. So everything that I'm going to need to keep this ship fighting and alive in a combat environment. Which means that I definitely am going to need a medical bay. Alright, so we have our medical bay. Awesome. Now, what else are we going to need? Well, we don't actually need that much in a space engineer's ship. In fact, part of me almost wants to move this a little bit, because it's, what is it, a 2x2? Yeah, it's a 2x2. Doesn't quite fit right no matter what I do over here. No, it's neither here nor there. So we're going to put that in, right? And then we're going to put in our... We need some storage over here as well, alright? So that's going to be some storage for us. And I could use a 3x3 cargo container, but again, survivability above all else. If battle damage does penetrate this section, yes, they're right next to each other, but we may get lucky and we may only lose one or two of them. We may not lose all four. Versus if we had a large cargo container, it would all share the same damage, and if it was hit, we'd probably lose the whole thing. We also are going to need a door. Okay. So now we have that. Now what else do we need for this ship? Well, we're going to need some power generation. So let's get ourselves some small reactors. Small reactors. Yes, small reactors. All right. And then over here, I'm also going to do something else. Now, small reactors, those of you who know space engineers will know, are less efficient than large reactors. The reason I'm using small reactors for this design is so that we have, again, survivability. Because this isn't going to be our only reactor room. We're going to have other reactor rooms in other parts of the ship. So that's the first part of our Citadel. Okay? Not too bad. We just need to weld that together, which I believe I have a ship capable of doing that right over here. Now, the reason in World War II, they ran into much the same problem that we're running into in Space Engineers, where we don't have the thruster capability to really build huge ships that have equal protection and equal armor all the way across them. Apparently I ran out of something here. So instead, they decided, interior plates, so instead they decided to build ships that, while not equally protected, could survive the most hits. Now, in battleships, this usually meant that you had sort of this box in the center of the ship, all right? And that box basically contained your magazines, your ammunition. So your ammunition storage, or your magazines, were contained in there. And you also usually had your power plant. Power plant, magazines, your fire control systems, and other systems that you needed to keep the ship fighting. Everything else was much less heavily armored, because quite simply, you don't need it to keep the ship fighting. Okay, let me look at, as I break window focus for a second. Let's look up this. Let's pull this. 100 for each. So I'm going to need 400 reactor components. I'm going to need, I have the large steel tubes, I have the metal grids. Do I have enough motors? Ooh, I'm running out of motors. Okay. So let's go over to production. Beautiful. All right, well, we can unattach her there. Roll her back over and fly back out to our new ship. You can see she's actually going to be fairly big. Already we're looking at a fairly large vessel. Did I not grab the interior plates I needed? No, I didn't. Alright, so let's just fly back over. Now, this ship's a little bit different than anything you would have seen during World War II, simply because it's not going to be a turreted vessel. This vessel is basically just going to be a broadside ship. Okay. Now, the advantage to a broadside vessel is that it's a lot less complicated, for one. Two, I don't honestly think that the turreted ship tactics honestly work in Space Engineers as we see it now. Because we're all using the same size weapons, right? We're all using the same missiles. The challenge that you run into with a broadside ship, or with a turreted ship, is that it's not the same historical situation that you would have seen the development of the dreadnought vessels, so the all big gun armament warships. We only have really one size of armament here. So our throw weight, or rather the amount of damage we can actually produce and chuck out at the enemy, is limited to the number of missiles we have firing at the enemy. Now, a turreted ship naturally has much fewer weapons capable of firing at an enemy at a time. Simply a turret requires a lot more space than a broadside mount does, right? You have the turret, you have the rotation mechanism, you have the armor, right? You have to armor it. Whereas with a broadside vessel, your armor is really just part of the rest of your ship, right? Your armor is actually part of the ship's hull armor. So you're not gaining any extra mass when you're adding a turret, or you're adding a broadside launcher. So without the capability of having big guns that, or the situation of World War II where turret development reached the place where, or weapons development could overcome armor, given enough weight, you have a situation where really a few weapons on a ship is going to be worse than having many weapons on a ship. Even if it takes me a little bit longer to bring that battery into bear, my larger battery will be able to deal much more damage than a large ship will. Also because I don't have a crew to work with. Alright, now if we had a way of aiming our turrets without worrying about having someone else to aim them, or rather, we could separate the duties a little bit. So I could be flying it, you could be shooting it, that sort of deal. We don't have that. Well, we kind of do, but we kind of don't. Or at least I don't have that right now. I only have a system where, it's basically just me. Yep, just me. It's just me. Well, maybe Tekrin, maybe one of my other friends. But, yeah, anyways, I can only reliably guarantee that I'm going to be here. Now, what do I need for this thing? Motors. Exactly what I thought I was going to run out of. So, I need a ship that I can fly solo. And that leaves me pretty much with a broadside vessel. It's a little bit too complicated to actually engage someone with a turreted vessel where you have to aim the turrets manually, you have to deal with, lining everything up. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. There we go. You have to worry about lining everything up and bringing everything into range, blah, 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 blah. It's a bit of not a pain, really, but it's not the most easy thing to do, especially if you're just one guy flying a ship. So instead, I would rather just put my broadside at the enemy and engage him that way, rather than worrying about, where my turrets are aimed, parallax, etc., etc., etc. Parallax is another huge issue with a turreted ship. Okay, so parallax is the concept of, and it's most often seen in fighters, and I know I probably talked about this before, but parallax is if you have two weapon systems pointing straight ahead, right? And they're, say, 10 feet separated from each other, and you're aiming at an enemy ship. Parallax is the concept that although your enemy, that you're going to have to curve your weapons in, right? They both have to point in towards the body of the enemy. Now, the challenge becomes that you have to adjust for this. You have to adjust for the fact that your weapons are spaced apart and you want them, basically, to both be aiming at the same point. Now, this means that if you have two turrets on a battleship, right, and you're both aiming at the same ship at a range of 20 kilometers. Now, if they're off by a degree, that may not be a huge deal if they're not aiming just at the same point. That's not a huge deal when you're close, but when you get further and further away, it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger deal. So, if you're aiming your weapons all at once and you say, alright, everything rotate 50 degrees or 45 degrees to fire on that enemy, you might hit him with one gun, you might hit him with 2 or 3 guns, but unless you're capable of adjusting for parallax, you're going to have issues getting as many rounds as possible onto the target. Now, we need 9 medical components. Now, that's a huge issue for real-life stuff. Well, actually, it isn't, because on a real-life battleship, you have, crew, and you have other personnel, and you have all sorts of stuff that you can use. Do I not have any medical components? I have no silver. Do I have any silver anywhere in my network? I don't think I do. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. Silver's what? AG, isn't it? I have gold, silicon, silver. Oh, because that's in the disconnected disassembler. Okay, that's why. So, on a real ship, you have crew. On this ship, I probably won't. So instead, what I have to do is design a ship that's much more resistant to the parallax problem. And that is... that should feed out. There we go. All right. There we go. So I have to design a ship that's more resistant, and honestly the best way of doing that is just to throw a lot of weaponry downrange simultaneously. So, broadside. Higher concentration of firepower, more likely to punch through the enemy ship. In essence, just a better solution to the issues that we're running into with how Space Engineers' warships have to be designed. I don't have power on this thing, do I? Nope. Okay, so what do we need next? Well, we're going to need some conveyors. I could use those blast doors too. Alright, so let's go with conveyors. Yeah, let's do it like this. Now, I don't yet know what that's going to be used, that pipe's going to be used for, but I'm assuming that that cargo connection is going to be used for something, and I should probably use it. Alright. So let's now get out some of these guys. And then we'll put one of these. And then we need some curved tubes as well. Doesn't fit right, does it? What if that's supposed to mean that it's not functional yet? I don't know, but we'll put one on just in case. I'm not sure if it'll actually do anything, but whatever. We have the connection coming over, we might as well use it. Alright, so that's in place. Now, yes, I am opening up a hole in different parts of my ship, but... Okay, now what do you need? What do you need? Small steel tubes. Do I have any small steel tubes laying around? Probably not, and I don't think I can scavenge any easy. Let's see, do you have any small... What do you have in you anyways? I've yet to check the ship since I started playing again, and that probably means there's a lot of crap in here that I don't even know about. No, you have nothing in you. Okay. I think I used up all my remaining small steel tubes, didn't I? Pretty certain that I did. Yeah, I did. Alright, so we're going to produce some more of that. Alright, while that's producing, let's take a look at what else we need to do. So now that we have the beginnings of our box done, we're going to start armoring up the sides. Because, again, this ship is basically going to be a large armored box. Alright? Yes, armored box. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Now, I'm actually going to build her with 2 armored boxes. Why? Well, the answer to that is actually kind of entertaining, which is that AI systems and Space Engineers tend to aim for the center of mass of your ship. Alright, so if you build a ship that has just like a different center of mass, let's say, not even strange, just different, you can actually get away with taking a lot more damage. Most players also tend to aim just naturally center of mass on a target. Call it good shooter instinct, actually, combined with, you know. So let's say, call it 3. And then that'll be the roof, right? like that. So that's the roof. And then it's going to be too high. Like this. So we basically have these two joined armored boxes, and then we'll have the main part of our ship in between that. Okay, so that's the basic rough design for how this thing's going to work. And this side's going to actually come up 3. And so that'll be the roof level right there. And yes, this is going to be a lot of weight and a lot of armor. And this isn't the only heavy armor the ship is going to have. The rest of the ship is going to be equally well armored. It's just that for right now, this is what we're going to be using as our base design. Or rather, this is the Citadel. So this area is going to have basically an extra layer of armor on it that the rest of the ship won't. Okay? The rest of the ship is going to have armor, and it's going to be decent armor at that, though I think the quote-unquote ceiling is probably going to be the least well-armored portion of the ship, for a variety of reasons. Ships and space engineers have better roll control than anything else. Gyros are really good at rolling a ship. So what we want to do is we want to actually use that roll ability to shield the ship from any fire coming in from the sides. And I'll show you guys how that's going to work when we get there. I may actually have to move the ship now that I think about it, but we might have enough space. I builds are kind of close to the other one. Alright, so we're just laying out bits now. And those small steel tubes should actually be done. Now, as for weapon load, of course, this is a large ship, which means our only real choice for player-controlled weapon systems is the missile launcher. Large ship/station missile launcher. There we go. Let's get... I wish you could access the cargo bay from inside the cockpit. You really should be able to, in my humble opinion, but I kind of get why they didn't. So, let's hop back inside. Yeah, that went quite nicely. Now, for those of you who are going to correct me and say that this is all stuff that should be done after the hull is finished on a real ship, you would be entirely 110% accurate. On a real ship, this would all be done as part of the fitting out after she's actually been completed. But because this is space engineers, and because, you know, I want to get some of these systems in place so I'm not just laying heavy armor blocks around, and because I don't really have a blueprint in mind as I'm building this, I'm really freehanding it, I figure it's excusable. So yes, warship design. Now, what am I hoping for with regards to warship design in the future? Well, primarily what I'm hoping for is more weapon systems. I'd like to see different calibers of missile. I'd like to see maybe a directed energy weapon or two, maybe. I mean, heaven knows the reactors we're using are putting out enough power to produce a pretty serious laser if we wanted to. I think some more smart weapons would be nice, but I have a suspicion that most of those will be player-built when the scripting system comes out. We need more steel plates. Yes, as I said, I have a suspicion those will be mostly player-controlled once the new scripting system is actually done, simply because that makes more sense and that seems to fit better with what they're kind of planning on doing. But as for the scripting system, I'm actually kind of psyched about it. I hope it's as easy to use as ComputerCraft. I mean, I'm actually fairly programming incompetent. Well, okay, that's not true. I'm programming incompetent with anything that isn't web design language. Like, if you chuck me in the general direction of, say, I could do Python, I can do Java a little bit. I can troubleshoot Java code. I can't really write it. I can do a little bit of HTML. I can do a little bit of a lot of things, but I'm not really good at any one language specifically. If I had to pick one that I'm the best at, it's probably Python. Which is relatively similar to Lua. If you're a layman, it's very similar to Lua. If you're into computer code and different types of code, you're going to scream at me, but generally it is a similar concept to Lua. Alright, that's the easy way of saying it. So let's finish up this wall. So I'm hoping I'm actually hoping it is Lua, to be honest with you, because that would make my life infinitely easier, because I would just have to relearn, I would have to relearn everything to do it and use it decently. So yes, this ship. What am I planning on using it for? Mostly hunting NPC ships. Being perfectly honest with you. Yes, there are easy ways to hunt NPC ships, but I'd much rather do it the old-fashioned way. Alright, so this part of the Citadel is done. Well, sort of. It's yet to get a roof, but that can wait. So if we come down to here... Yeah, she's going to be a big ship. Big ship. Though... Actually, as I think about it... Let's redo this a little bit. Let's only give her one half of a Citadel. Okay, so shove that in there, right? What else can we stick in weird places in here? So again, this is the process of cramming everything you can into a tight space aboard a warship. So we put those in there, right? We can line them up to there. And that gives us a decent number of gyros. And what we'll do is we'll knock out, I think, this wall. That's going to take forever. So I'll have to do that off camera. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this in a little bit. And I'm going to try and pack some stuff in here. And I think that'll work. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Actually, guys, I just realized we're out of time for this episode because I went rambling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this ship apart and redesign a little bit because I realize that it's going to be really tall and kind of cuboid. And that's not the look I'm going for. Because I still want it to look nice. So what I'm going to do is... well, I don't need to actually rip off that top layer because that's actually the roof. And that's going to stay right where it is. Gosh, it takes a while when you're doing it by hand. So I'm going to be redesigning this a little bit. And I will see you guys in the next episode. This has been episode 24 of Mr. Kassarian's Let's Play Space Engineers Survival. Hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. I know I did. I hope you may have learned something from my rambling on the subject while I was building. I enjoyed rambling at you. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, give me a like, comment, subscription, share it with your friends. Give me some, pay attention to me. And don't forget, guys, I do answer my comments in my comments sections. So if you want to talk to me, just throw up a message over there. All right, this has been Mr. Kassarian. As always, guys, happy flying.